Hello everybody and welcome! In this video I'm going to be kind of ranking all of the spawn room weapons. I'm not going to be editing this basically at all other than, changing what weapons are on screen obviously, and also putting time cards and things like that, so if you want to watch me use this weapon and see my insight of using this weapon and why my opinions are the way that they are, you can go look at those videos there. But essentially what I mean by that is I'm not going to cut myself talking in between every single gun. I'm going to go fluid through all of it, because a lot of the time whenever you make a video like this, you'll be like, okay, number 11, you would say number 11, then you'll have a break, you'll be like, okay, cool, what are my thoughts for the next gun? I'm not going to do that this time, and I'm just going to do what I always do and improvise. My improvisation skills, I would say, pretty good. But essentially, let's go over the rules of this one. So essentially, the LSAT is banned, that is the only rule. Let's get into the video. So, at number 11, we have the Springfield. It is positioned terribly. It is on the American side of Verrucht. It is only on one map. It costs 200 points, pretty good. But it also has, the worst damage imaginable, where it only is a one-shot headshot on round 1. It isn't even a one-shot body shot on round 1. So it has basically 66% less damage than the Kar98K, which means it's just terrible and it should just be free, honestly. But even still then, people would still complain. But essentially, it doesn't really get you anywhere. It does low damage, it has inaccurate iron sights, and it's not really good at all. It's kind of more of just a funsy weapon kind of thing, where it's like, oh yeah, maybe I'll fuck around with the Springfield. I will say, though, that if you're good enough at looping, any weapon can be a good weapon. Because if you can loop, all that matters is the damage and the DPS and the reload. How much can you fucking do in one shot, many shots, and how much downtime does that weapon have? That's the only thing that matters if you can loop. So essentially every weapon is good if you loop. But in World at War and Verrucht especially, there can be a lot of issues with that. And especially if you buy the Springfield side, you actually make one of the only loops there really bad. So overall, the Springfield, not very good weapon. Number 10, though, we have the Arasaka, which is the upgraded version, I would have to say, of the Springfield. Still map exclusive, only on Shinonuma in World at War, but it's essentially just a complete reskin of the Kar98K, different iron sights, obviously, which some people might like or not like. I think both of them are pretty nice. I think they both work really well. They're both really fun weapons. The Arasaka, obviously, literally just a reclone of the Kar98K, so it does a one-shot headshot until round 4. Round 4, you can headshot into knife. So essentially, you can use this weapon for 4 rounds, get a lot of points, go do whatever the fuck you want to do. I know there'll be a lot of, purists that will say, oh, you could just knife a zombie. This is a spawn room tier list. I'm not ranking the knife and the pistols, because then I would be like, the Boomhilda, number 999, on the very top of the tier list, best gun ever. No, this is just this. It would be funny, though, to be like a bunch of guns and then say, the standard knife. That would be very funny, maybe for an April Fool's video. But essentially, the Arasaka, pretty okay stock standard weapon, no pack-a-punch, so pretty middling. Next, we have the M1 Garand at number 9. We love the ping. We worship the ping, honestly. But it's not really that good of a weapon. Overall, its stats are pretty okay, with, I think, 128 in reserve, as well as 8 in the magazine, which is okay, but it's the worst out of all the semi-automatic rifles. It does have the awesome effect of realism. If you shoot every single bullet out of the magazine of an M1 Garand in World of War Zombies, it will reload 0.7 seconds faster, which is insane, because it reloads in 2.2 seconds regularly. So it's basically like adding speed cola to your weapon. And if you have speed cola, it's literally a 0.5 second reload, essentially, which is fucking fantastic. However, the only problem with this weapon is, yet again, it's on the bad side of Verrucht, and as well, it doesn't have as much fucking, oomph as, some other spawn room weapons, and it also just doesn't have a pack-a-punch, because the M1000 doesn't really exist. Maybe it does in BO1 Zombies, although it can't, because there's no box weapons on that map from World War. But essentially, The M1000 doesn't exist because I think they just said, hey, it's kind of redundant to have this because we're gonna have the fucking launcher. But they already made the model of the M1000, and then they're like, oh, well, we can just reuse the model, just add the grenade launcher, and boom. And that's what happened, essentially, I think, in the Treyarch offices in 2009, essentially. But yeah, the M1 Garand, overall, not that very good, and you still can't pack a punch with it because it's on Voract. Number 8, we have the M1A1 Carbine, which is only on knock as a spawn room weapon. Spawn room wise, it's okay. It has 15 bullets in the magazine, and then it has like fucking 125 in reserve, or like 105 in reserve, I think. Which is just really middling. Like it's just not good. Like it's okay, right? Like semi-auto wise, it's pretty good. But I feel like a lot of people would just look at other weapons and say, well, that's just way better. And the other thing about it is you can't pack a punch on knock. Like the other, like, 3 weapons essentially. So you still can't pack a punch this weapon in this consideration of this tier list. So you can't even just say that. The best this weapon has to reach is no perks. Just the moment you buy it, that's the best it gets on knock. And because of that, it has to rank kind of low, but it's definitely better, in my opinion, than the M1 Garand, the Arasaka, and the Springfield. The M1 Garand could say, hey, but speed caller double tap. We're not counting Jug, because that'd just be unfair. But, weapon-wise, like, there could be some consideration. But honestly, I feel like, the M1A1 Carbine, it kind of already doesn't face those problems because it's just better. It has slightly more damage, better fire rate, better reload, and more ammo. So it's kind of just a no-brainer. The next weapon we have at number 7 is the Guajar 43. This weapon is pack-a-punchable. That's why it wins by default. It is the middle child of the semi-automatic rifles of World at War Zombies. Instead of having 8 or 15, it has 10 in the magazine. It has 120 in reserve, so it kind of has, the middle of everything as well. Because the M1A1 has 105 in reserve, this has like 120, and then the M1 Garand has 128. So essentially each one of them kind of has like this cool opposite of the lower the ammo in the magazine, the higher the ammo in the reserve, which is awesome. But essentially the reason why this one is so good is essentially just because of the fact that you can pack punch it on Doris, where it is a spawn room weapon. And that is literally it. This tier list is actually the most bullshit tier list if you go by the rules that I've set, which is just, how good are they? In general. But yeah, so the Guajar 43 is the one of the only war weapons in World of War that has a pack punch, which is why it's here. The next weapon on the tier list, or ranking, is the Kar98K on number 6. So this weapon is pretty okay. It's a body shot bandit until like round 12ish, and it can pierce up to 3 zombies. So it basically is a one-shot body shot kill for, a while, honestly. And sometimes it feels like you're glitching the Matrix, because you're like, wait a minute, isn't the Kar98K meant to be bad? Why am I body shotting entire hordes away? And then eventually it does become a headshot only weapon. But at that point, you probably pumped yourself up a little bit. So you're like, yeah, I'm ready for just, headshots. And then even still, if you're able to loop with this weapon, it's just 3,000 damage headshots, which is pretty okay. It means, like, you're going to be able to use this weapon until round 20. And that's, like, really good for, like, a starting room weapon without double tap 2.0. That's really good, especially because of the fact that, it doesn't have much ammo, but you get so many points for killing a bunch of zombies all the time. It doesn't do well against dogs, though, I will say. But a lot of the weapons on this list are either really good primaries or secondaries, and the Kar98K is a primary that is more secondary, let's be honest. At number 5, we have the M14. Now, this might be a shocker for all of you, I know, but basically there's going to be an analogy here, and it's called the Funky Kong effect, where you associate greatness to something when the real greatness is the statistics of it. So essentially, everyone's like, oh, Funky Kong in fucking Mario Kart Wii. But what they really mean to say is +2 speed Flame Runner. Meta. And it's essentially the same for the M14 in my opinion, because everyone, like, I know that there's the jokey, gangs of the M14 game and Olympia gang, but there's not really much point to, like, the M14 is good, but you never use it. You know what I mean? Like when I like make my two videos of the Menerja, like both of them are just like I barely even use them myself. Like in the town one I actually use the M14 completely the entire time. But I feel like that's the most use anyone has gotten out of the M14 because no one uses it. You don't pack a punch the thing. And I think that's the thing that's really telling. If everyone's all like, "Oh no, the M14's great," but no one even bothers to pack a punch it. Like, it does okay damage. It does pretty good damage. It does like 1500 per headshot, which is pretty good. It has like 16 bullets, so you can like just spam that into a crowd. And when you get double tap 2.0, if you're playing on BO2, that's also really good as well. However, the problem is it basically is saying, like Galil, would you rather like a Galil or would you rather an M14? With the Olympia, it's a secondary weapon. You're definitely not going to have it as your primary. It's more so like your, oh no, I'm playing Dive Eyes for something, or, I'm playing Mob of the Dead, and there's an enemy right in front of me, and bang bang, the enemy's gone. Like, that's what it's for. The M14, however, is meant to be your primary weapon that you loop around with, and then you get a bunch of headshots with. And because of that, this one just falls flat, because it isn't the best at what it does. I think, honestly, the top three weapons and the honorable mention are all fantastic weapons that you could use as your primary. And then the Olympia is just way better because it actually serves a really good role, even though it's very cheap. So because of that, that's why the M14 is going to be lower. Obviously, if you're doing a spawn room only challenge, the M14 is obviously better than the Olympia. But for most cases in this run, however, it's basically fair to just say that, the M14 is just a bit worse than the Olympia. More so, the Menerja is a bit worse than the Hades. And now, at number 4, with the M14, we have the Olympia. So the Olympia, as we all know, is shit on a lot because people are just not good with it, and the community likes to force things to be the way that they were because they don't like change. Because everyone in the Call of Duty community has autism, obviously. But essentially, what I mean by that is that anything in the past that YouTubers used to say has to be true now. And one thing that people always say is, "Oh, the Olympia is bad." It really isn't. Like, go watch my video on the Hades, which, yes, I do not use the Olympia the entire time, but if you want to see that, go watch my shotguns only video. I literally play Shangri-La, and for like the first 8 or so rounds, I just use the Olympia. Like, it's not that bad. Like, Shangri-La, oh man, it's such a hard map. It isn't. Like, people have, these crazy, expectations of things because it's like, oh no, but YouTubers say. Well, most YouTubers are just like, oh yeah, I remember people saying it was hard, or I remember playing this back in the day and it was hard. Because the only thing people do nowadays when they do YouTube, especially content creation wise, is they either do a video where they play multiple games in one thing and it's just getting jug, which I love those challenges too myself. But what it does is it just allows you to only get a snippet of the map, and you can't make a full-fledged opinion on a weapon or a map with only a tiny amount of info. And that's the reason why I think a lot of people don't like or don't even know how good the Olympia is. The Olympia is meant to be a single kill weapon that can actually kill 2 zombies because of piercing. That can do in BO2 10,000 damage. That is like having that's like having 3.5 ray gun bullets shot at an enemy that pierces through the enemy and then hits the other zombie. Full, direct damage and splash damage. That's how good the Olympia is in BO2, pack punched. And in BO1, it still does, it does 2 ray gun bolts. Literally every single shot you fire from the Olympia is essentially just a ray gun bolt, which I know, oh man, the ray gun kind of fell off too, but in BO1 it's actually pretty damn good. Before a wall weapon, being able to do 2400 damage, that's a one shot until round 20, round 18. Yeah, it's a one shot until round 18. That's really good. Like, it one-shot kills zombies until, like, round 18. That's crazy good, and it's the same for all the other shotguns, essentially. But yeah, like, the Olympia is heavily underrated. I honestly, like, if you just want to have a fun game of Kino or something, or maybe Town, but probably not Town. But, like, if you want to just have some fun, literally just go Pack-a-Punch the Hades, and just loop with it and see just how much shit you can get away with, because it's actually pretty fun. And number three, we have my boy, the Shiva. The Shiva, you can fully kit it out with weapon kit, meaning it shoots slightly faster, has a better iron sight, but also in general, it just runs a bit better, it's a bit smoother. But in general, it's just okay. You have a speed reloader, so essentially, you reload really fast, you have 30 bullets and 300 in reserve. That's fucking good. So you have really good ammo, really good reload, and you have alternate ammo types, and you have double tap 2.0. So the only weakness of the weapon, which is its slow firing speed, gets fixed. Yes, it's still semi-automatic, but so is the fucking RK5. That's a triple burst, but it's still basically semi-automatic. So the thing about it is, like, you just aim head, dead. It is really effective, and the footage I show will probably not be that reflective, but I did have a game where I got to, like, round 30 with the Shiva, or, like, at least, like, round 28, and then it stopped being a one-shot headshot with double tap, and I was like, oh, okay. But, like, it's still really good. It doesn't have any pierce, like, whatsoever, because in BO3 they kind of wanted to make that more of a really special trait of weapons. But yeah, the Shiva in general, really good weapon. It has a lot of fucking tools that you can use. You're probably going to be using, especially on, like, the Giant, you're probably going to be using, something like Stamina Up, Jug, Double Tap, and Speed Cola. Going for a good, quad perk setup, and then maybe Widow's Mine if you can squeeze that in. Maybe on something like, I don't know, Zetsubo or something. Like, you're probably going to be doing really well with a setup like that, which is awesome. But yeah, and then that is basically all there is to talk about the Shiva. Which is surprising because of the M14 and Olympia moments. But yeah, the Shiva is really good, consistent, but it's just good and consistent in a game where every weapon is just so bullshit it's not funny. But yeah, the next weapon on the list, and number 2, is the Ballista. So we all know what the number 1 weapon is by now, but let's talk about the Ballista anyway. The Ballista is basically a wet dream for me. It is an awesome weapon. It is really fun, and it just exacerbates the idea of, can you loop? If loop, then good. It does piercing damage. It does headshots that are really strong. You can get it in iron sight or with the little scope, depending on how you want to be a 360 gamer with the Ballista. And other than that, it has good ammo. The firing speed is a bit meh, but you're going to be using double tap anyway. Reload, speed cola. There's a lot of fun shit with the Ballista. It's on Origins, which means you can be at the most amount of power possible. It's just really fucking good. I actually, like, honestly, the Ballista is one of those weapons where I have moments where I'm like, I want to play the Ballista again. It's really fun. It's really cool. And that's the same thing with the RK5 and the Shiva and even the Olympia. All of those weapons are spawn room weapons that are also just like, I want to do that again. Because they're strong. Like the RK5, you're like, haha, yeah, of course I'm going to use the RK5. It's great. The Ballista, well, the Shiva and the Olympia are like, I'm going to have some fun this game. And then the M14 is if you're bland and you fucking, still laugh at Facebook memes. But yeah. So the Ballista is, like, pretty good overall. It is locked to one map. However, the community loves to be bullshit with tier lists. So I'm going to be bullshit with my tier list. Because in my opinion, if a gun is only on one map, it physically should never be able to be in, like, top 3. Unless, like, the tier list is about, like, wonder weapons or something. But because, this is my tier list, and also because a lot of the time anyway, with spawn rooms, especially if you're doing like a spawn room challenge, it really doesn't matter. Because there's the two aspects of it. I think that the Ballista is pretty damn good overall, and is definitely a weapon you can actually main. You can actually properly use this as your primary weapon. The Shiva, you can too. So the Shiva, the Ballista, and the RK5, all primary weapons. You can all use them primarily. So, before we get to the final one, I know I said at the very start of the video that this one wouldn't count, but we're going to talk about it anyway. The good old LSAT. This is the honorable mention. Technically not a spawn room weapon, technically is. Just a really fun weapon to use overall, and just such a fun send-off to an otherwise kind of sad set of maps. But now, at number 1, it's your boy, the RK5. The gun that got me to round fucking 33 or whatever on fucking, the Giant, which has now been beaten by my round 35 by choice loss on the map 5 with the Winter's Howl and Stakeout, which is hilarious. But essentially, the RK5 is just really solid. It's really good, and a lot of the times the placement of it is perfect for refueling ammo. And if you're getting those headshots and you're training well and you're getting all the zombies bunched up, it does a lot of damage, and it's really good. Unironically, the RK5, yes, burns through ammo like a motherfucker, but it also just fucking can deal with zombies like no one's business. If you watch my video of the RK5, you can get far with the weapon, especially if you have a really good strategy like I did. So yeah, I think honestly the RK5 is the pinnacle in a way of war weapons in general. Obviously, yeah, you could slap on double the ammo and then be like, hey, pretty good, huh? But I think the fact that the RK5 is so solid and even is used to take out, Marguas at some points and stuff like that, if you really don't want to buy a KRM, and, you can use it in so many different scenarios. It's so versatile, it's so good, it's good for points, it's good for damage, it's good for looping. It's just the perfect kind of idea for a weapon. And I think it's really funny that it is that good. You also have, double Pack-a-Punch as well with this and the Shiva. The Shiva, the reason why I didn't really talk about it is because it's kind of eh. But, if you really want to, you can say that, the Shiva's better than the Ballista, which I would honestly say is probably true. But because it's my tier list and I get to say what happens, the Ballista's number 2. But yeah, the RK5, insanely good. BO3 completely ruined game balance anyway, which is why BO3 weapons will always basically be at the top anyway. But yeah, I hope you all really enjoyed this video. I hope you maybe check out some of these other videos as well. But yeah, I'll see you all next time. I have a few more of these, but a lot of them will be way more script based. I have a top 10 pistols in Call of Duty Zombies, not counting BO3 Zombies. So World at War 2, good old BO2. And I'm writing a script for that video. So it's going to take a bit longer, but yeah. I hope you enjoyed this video. All the footage is mine, by the way, which is awesome. And you can check all of them out during the links, so I hope you maybe check out a few of those. But yeah, hope you all have an absolutely wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.